My courtroom has seen thousands of faces over the years. Some arrive nervous, some defiant, some humbled. Most are there for small infractions, speeding, parking, a minor slip in judgment. But every so often, someone walks in carrying a story so heavy, so layered, that the entire courtroom seems to pause and listen. That's what happened the day William Sequeira stood before me. On paper, he was there for unpaid parking tickets. Just another case on the docket. But when I looked at him, there was something in his eyes, a weight, a weariness that spoke of battles long fought. When I asked him about his case, he surprised me. He leaned forward, steady, and said, "Judge, you might not believe this, but Ben Affleck played me in the movie The Town." The courtroom stirred. People chuckled softly. Some shook their heads. But William did not smile. He was serious. And then slowly he began to tell me his story. He confessed that in his younger years, he had lived a life outside the law. He robbed banks, not just once, not twice, but so many times he lost count. In fact, he claimed to have hit well over 100 banks. The risks were enormous, the violence real, and eventually the law caught up with him. For that life of crime, William spent nearly 30 years in a federal prison. 30 years, enough to harden any man, or to break him completely. He spoke of the brutality behind those walls, of days filled with fear, of nights where survival meant staying alert every second. And yet, he also spoke with a strange mix of nostalgia and regret, recalling how he once fell in love with a bank teller during a robbery. She hid his money when the police came, a moment straight out of a film. And that's when it struck me. The parallels were uncanny. The movie The Town, directed by Ben Affleck, was about men like William, bank robbers in Boston, hardened by crime yet complicated by love and loyalty. William believed Affleck's character, Doug McCrae, was shaped by his life, his crimes, his story. As he spoke, there was no arrogance in his voice. No bragging. It was as though the years had wrung the pride out of him. What remained was a man who had carried his punishment and knew its cost. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was trying to explain who he was and how far he had fallen. And yet, here he was, not in front of me for another robbery, not for violence, but for a handful of parking tickets. It almost felt absurd. A man who had once been considered one of the most dangerous criminals in the state now stood before me because his car was parked in the wrong place. I studied him for a moment. I thought about the decades he had spent behind bars. I thought about the system, about how justice is often uneven, how some murderers walk free after less time than he had served. And I thought about how, despite all of that, William was here facing me, not as a criminal, but as a man seeking some measure of dignity. That's when I made a decision. I told William that his fines would be paid through our court's donation fund, a fund made possible by the kindness of strangers who wanted to give people a second chance. I said to him, "Sometimes the best justice we can give is compassion." In that moment, I saw something change in his face. It wasn't just relief. It was gratitude. For once, he wasn't treated as a case number or a criminal record. He was treated as a human being. Later, I learned that William had found work at a produce company. He was delivering fruits and vegetables, earning an honest living. And in a follow-up, he said something I'll never forget. "It was hard to imagine I'm free. But you never stop learning. Stay positive. Do the right thing." Those words, from a man who had spent 3 decades in a federal cell, carried more weight than any lecture I could give. Because William had lived through the worst of choices, the harshest of punishments, and still found the courage to speak of hope. I often say that my courtroom is not just about punishment. It is about understanding. And William's story is proof of that. We cannot rewrite the past. We cannot undo the harm done, nor the pain suffered. But we can offer mercy. We can encourage change. And sometimes, that small act of compassion is enough to open a door a man thought was forever closed. When I look back on that day, I don't just see a man claiming to have inspired a Hollywood film. I see a reminder that justice without compassion is empty. That even the hardest of stories can still carry a spark of redemption. And that every person, no matter their past, deserves the chance to be seen not only for what they did, but for who they might still become.